I died on a Tuesday. Or rather, I was supposed to die on a Tuesday. In my previous life, that's when it happened. When pneumonia finally claimed what little remained of my weakened body. I remember the feeling of drowning in my own lungs, the hospital room spinning, and the devastating silence from Louis Edward, the man I'd devoted everything to for 7 long years. But the cruelest part wasn't dying alone. It was what I learned in those final moments, when I overheard the nurses talking outside my room. Such a shame, one had whispered. His fiancé is already planning a wedding with someone else. The childhood sweetheart, right? Daniel Park. Can you imagine? The wedding is scheduled for next week, right after this one's funeral. I died with that knowledge burning in my chest, more painful than any physical ailment. Then I woke up, 5 years earlier. In my old bedroom at the Montgomery estate, sunlight streaming through curtains I'd forgotten I once owned. My body was healthy, strong, 23 again instead of 28. And I had one singular, crystal-clear thought. I will not waste this life on Louis Edward. The engagement contract sat in my grandfather's study, where it had always been. But this time I read it differently. This time, I noticed what I'd been too love-struck to see before. It specified marriage into the Edwards family, but never named which Edwards. A slow smile spread across my face. The Edwards estate loomed before me, all stone and ivy and old money. I'd been here countless times in my previous life, always as Louis's apologetic fiancé, always making myself smaller to fit into his world. Not anymore. Levi Montgomery to see Mr. Edwards, I told the butler, my voice steady and clear. The patriarch received me in his study, the same room where he'd once tried to convince me not to give up on his wayward grandson. This time I wasn't here to discuss Louis at all. Levi, this is unexpected. Mr. Edwards gestured to a chair. Louis mentioned you two had a disagreement. That's not why I'm here, sir. I accepted the seat, crossing my legs with deliberate confidence. I'm here about the marriage contract between our families. His eyebrows rose. I see. Louis is currently going through a phase. He's cut ties with the family temporarily, something about proving he can make his own choices. The old man's expression was weary. But he'll come around. The boy always does. I'm not interested in waiting for him to come around. I pulled out my own copy of the contract. The agreement specifies marriage into the Edwards family. It doesn't specify which Edwards. A heavy silence filled the room. Then a low chuckle came from behind me. Interesting interpretation. I turned to find a man leaning against the bookshelf and my breath caught. Fabian Edwards, Louis's uncle, though only 5 years older than his nephew. Where Louis was boyishly handsome with soft features and calculated charm, Fabian was something else entirely, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that seemed to see through pretense, and an aura of controlled power that filled the room. In my previous life I'd barely known him. He'd appeared at family functions with polite disinterest, running his own tech company and keeping his distance from the Edwards family drama. Uncle Fabian, I acknowledged, holding his gaze. I didn't know you were here. I came to discuss business with my father. He moved closer and I caught the subtle scent of his cologne, cedar and something darker. But this is far more intriguing. You're suggesting you'd rather marry me than Louis? I'm suggesting that I intend to honor the contract as written. I stood, drawing myself to my full height. My grandfather's last wish was that I marry into this family. I plan to respect that wish. But I choose whom I marry. Mr. Edwards looked between us, his expression unreadable. Fabian, you've never shown any interest in marriage. I haven't shown interest in the circus Louis calls a social life, Fabian corrected. But this? His eyes remained on me, analytical and intense. This has potential. I need to think about this, Mr. Edwards said slowly. This is highly irregular. With respect, sir, the contract is binding to my family, not yours, I replied. I'm offering the Edwards family a choice. Fabian or no one. If you refuse, I walk away, and you can explain to everyone why the Montgomery-Edwards alliance fell apart. Fabian caught up with me as I was leaving the estate. You're serious about this, he said. It wasn't a question. Completely. Why? He stepped closer, studying my face. Louis treated you poorly? He's going to let me die so he can marry someone else. But I couldn't say that. Instead I said, Louis is in love with someone else. His childhood friend, Daniel Park. They've been having an affair for over a year. Something dark flickered in Fabian's eyes. And you want revenge? I want to move forward with my life, I corrected. Marrying you accomplishes several things. It honors my grandfather's wish. It fulfills the contract. And it allows me to maintain my dignity instead of being the pathetic fool waiting for a man who will never love me. You've done your research, he observed. You know I have no interest in the family inheritance that Lewis is so desperate for. I know you built your own company from nothing. I know you value competence and directness. I know you and Lewis barely tolerate each other. I met his gaze squarely. That makes you perfect for my purposes. Your purposes. He laughed, but it wasn't unkind. You're not what I expected, Levi Montgomery. What did you expect? The lovesick boy who followed my nephew around like a lost puppy. He tilted his head. This version is much more interesting. I grew up, I said simply. No. Fabian moved closer, close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. You woke up. There's a difference. My heart hammered in my chest. This close, I could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the sharp line of his jaw, the way his lips curved with something that might have been approval. I'll consider your proposal, he said finally. But I want something in return. What? Honesty. If we're going to do this, even as a business arrangement, I won't tolerate games or manipulation. Lewis has cornered the market on that in this family. I extended my hand. Deal. His hand was warm, his grip firm, and when our palms touched, I felt something I hadn't expected, a spark of genuine connection. I'll need to verify your claims about Lewis and Daniel, he continued, still holding my hand. I don't take action without evidence. I expected nothing less. And if I agree, we'll need to get to know each other. Even a contractual marriage requires some level of compatibility. I'm amenable to that. He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face. Then let's have dinner, Levi. Tomorrow night. Somewhere Lewis and his circle won't find us. Fabian chose a restaurant on the edge of the city, all exposed brick and intimate lighting. Not the showy establishments where Lewis liked to be seen, but a place that valued quality over spectacle. Tell me about yourself, Fabian said once we'd ordered. Not the version Lewis knows. The real you. It should have been difficult. In my previous life, I'd spent so many years molding myself to Lewis's preferences that I'd almost forgotten who I was. But with Fabian the words came easily. I told him about my grandfather who'd raised me after my parents died. About my love for design and architecture, dreams I'd set aside to support Lewis's business ventures. About the loneliness of being in love with someone who saw you as an accessory rather than a partner. Lewis is using my work, I added, deciding to test his reaction. Designs I created for a project. He's planning to present them as Daniel's work to help launch his career. Fabian's expression darkened. When? Next month. A presentation to the board. And you have proof? I pulled out my phone, showing him the original files with timestamps and my signature design elements. I always do. He studied the designs with professional interest. These are exceptional. The structural innovation alone? He looked up at me. You created these? Architecture was my passion before I met Lewis. I set it aside to help him with his career. That was a mistake. The bluntness startled a laugh out of me. You don't pull punches, do you? I told you. I value honesty. He returned the phone. If we do this, when we do this, you won't set your dreams aside. I don't need a decorative spouse. I need a partner who challenges me. Is that what you want? A partnership. I've spent 30 years watching people in transactional relationships make each other miserable, Fabian said. My parents had one. Lewis's parents have one. If I'm going to marry, even for practical reasons, I want more than that. What do you want? He was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing the rim of his wine glass. Companionship. Intellectual stimulation. Someone who understands that work isn't just about money or status. It's about building something meaningful. His eyes met mine. What do you want, Levi? In my previous life, I would have said I wanted Lewis to love me. Now I knew better. I want respect, I said slowly. I want to be seen as an equal. I want to build a life that's mine, not shaped by someone else's expectations. I paused. And I want to prove that I'm more than the fool who wasted years on the wrong person. You're not a fool, Fabian said quietly. You loved someone who didn't deserve it. That's not foolishness, that's courage. The foolishness would be staying. Something in my chest loosened at his words. Our dinners became a regular occurrence. 3 times a week, then 4, then nearly every evening. We talked about everything. His company, my abandoned architectural dreams, books, philosophy, the suffocating nature of family expectations. Fabian was nothing like Lewis. Where Lewis had been charming but shallow, Fabian had depth. Where Louis had demanded attention, Fabian listened. And where Louis had made me feel small, Fabian made me feel seen. I've completed my investigation, he told me one evening, his expression grim. Louis and Daniel have been together for 18 months. Daniel is already wearing a ring, hidden under his shirt, but there. And Louis has been. He paused. He's been waiting for you to become ill. My blood ran cold. What? He has medical records. A genetic condition you inherited from your mother, one that typically manifests in the late 20s. Fabian's jaw was tight. He's planning to marry you, let the illness run its course, then use your death as tragic circumstances to marry Daniel, for comfort. It's calculated. It's monstrous. So it wasn't just my imagination from my previous life. Louis had actually been planning it, counting on my death. Then we stop him, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We do more than that. Fabian reached across the table, taking my hand. We build something he could never touch. Something real. It happened gradually, the shift from business arrangement to something more. There was the night Fabian drove me home in the rain, and we sat in his car talking until dawn broke over the city. The afternoon he showed up at my office with coffee and pastries because he'd remembered I'd mentioned skipping breakfast. The evening I found him in his home office, exhausted from a difficult negotiation, and I convinced him to let me make dinner instead of ordering in. Small moments that added up to something I hadn't expected. Genuine connection. I need to tell you something, Fabian said one evening. We were at his penthouse, a space of clean lines and thoughtful design that somehow felt more like home than anywhere I'd lived with Louis. This arrangement, it's becoming more than business for me. My heart stuttered. What do you mean? He set down his wine glass and turned to face me fully. I mean that I look forward to seeing you. That I think about you when we're apart. That the idea of this being purely contractual is starting to feel like a lie. Fabian. You don't have to reciprocate, he continued. We can still proceed with the marriage as planned. But I won't lie to you about my feelings. That was the deal. I stood, crossing the space between us. This close, I could see the vulnerability beneath his controlled exterior, the fear of rejection he was trying to hide. What if I told you, I said softly, that I've been falling for you too? That somewhere between the business dinners and the late-night conversations, I stopped thinking of this as an arrangement and started thinking of it as possibility? His breath hitched. Then I would ask if I could kiss you. Yes, I whispered. Fabian cupped my face with both hands, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. When his lips met mine, it was nothing like the performative kisses Louis had given me. This was real, soft and searching, building in intensity as I pressed closer to him. His hands slid into my hair and I gripped his shoulders, losing myself in the warmth of him. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Stay tonight, Fabian murmured against my lips. Not for, just stay. Sleep here. Wake up here. Let me make you breakfast and bore you with the morning financial reports. I laughed, the sound breathless and happy. That sounds perfect. We moved to his bedroom, but true to his word, it was innocent. We lay facing each other in the darkness, talking in whispers, hands clasped between us. Eventually, I drifted off to the sound of his breathing, feeling safer than I had in years. 2 weeks before the wedding, my worst suspicions were confirmed. I arrived at Louis's company, where I still technically consulted, to find Daniel presenting his designs to a group of potential investors. My designs. Every line, every innovation, presented as Daniel's genius. These are revolutionary, one investor was saying. Mr. Park, you have extraordinary talent. Daniel beamed, soaking in praise that should have been mine. Louis stood beside him, hand on Daniel's back, proud and proprietary. I took photos, recorded video, documented everything. Then I walked out and drove straight to Fabian's office. They did it, I told him, showing him the evidence. Daniel is taking credit for everything. Fabian's expression was cold fury. Then we act. But not yet. He pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my forehead. First we get married. Then we destroy them with facts they can't dispute. You're certain you want this? I asked. Once we marry, you're tied to the Montgomery Edwards drama. I'm already tied to you, he said simply. Everything else is just noise. Our relationship had evolved from tentative partnership to something deeper. Fabian was patient, never pushing, but the attraction between us was undeniable. There were stolen kisses in his office, long evenings that ended with us tangled together on his couch, making out like teenagers. I want you, he murmured one night, his hands sliding under my shirt. God, Levi, I want you so much. But I need you to be sure. I'm sure, I gasped, arching into his touch. Fabian, I'm sure. But he pulled back, resting his forehead against mine. Then let me do this right. Let me marry you first. Let our wedding night be real, not rushed. The restraint, the respect. It made me want him even more. Louis thought he was the groom. The idiot actually thought, despite everything, that I would still marry him. He'd returned to the family, made a show of reconciliation with his grandfather, and assumed I'd fall in line like I always had. The wedding venue was spectacular, a historic estate with gardens that seemed to stretch forever. White flowers everywhere, string quartet playing, society's elite in attendance. And cameras. So many cameras. I stood in the preparation room adjusting my white suit. Not traditional, but neither was this situation. Ready? Fabian appeared in the doorway, devastatingly handsome in his own dark suit. Ready? I confirmed. We walked to the ceremony space together, hand in hand. I could see Louis at the altar, preening in his tuxedo, assuming I was about to make the walk to him. The music started. I began walking down the aisle. Louis's smile was smug, satisfied. Daniel, seated in the audience, looked pale and anxious. He knew something Louis didn't. I kept walking. Past Louis. To where Fabian stood beside the officiant. The confusion on Louis's face was priceless. What are you doing? Louis sputtered, stepping forward. Levi, you're supposed to marry me. Am I? I turned to face him, letting everyone see my calm expression. The contract said I was to marry into the Edwards family. It never specified you. This is ridiculous. Louis looked to his grandfather, to his parents, to anyone who might support him. Father, tell him. The contract is fulfilled, Mr. Edwards said coldly. Levi has made his choice. A choice, I might add, that he had every right to make given your behavior. My behavior? I've done nothing. You've been having an affair with Daniel Park for over a year, Fabian said calmly. You've stolen Levi's work to advance your lover's career. You've treated a man who devoted years to you with contempt and disrespect. And you expected him to simply accept it. The crowd murmured. Cameras flashed. Louis's face went white, then red. From this moment forward, Fabian continued, his arms sliding around my waist, Levi is your uncle by marriage. You will address him with appropriate respect, or you will find yourself facing legal action for theft of intellectual property. Legal action? Louis's voice was strangled. I smiled. Did you think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't keep evidence? Every design Daniel presented as his own, I have the original files, time-stamped and signed. Every single one. And as for the inheritance clause in the Montgomery Edwards contract, Fabian added, his voice carrying to every corner of the venue, I believe everyone here should know that the Montgomery family estate and assets transfer partially to whomever marries Levi. That would be me now. Not you, Louis. Louis staggered as if struck. The inheritance, he'd been counting on it, I realized. Part of his long-term plan. This is humiliating, he hissed. How dare you? How dare I what? Choose not to be your consolation prize while you wait for me to die. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't regret them. Yes, Louis. I know about the medical records you pulled. About your plans. The shocked gasps from the audience were satisfying. Shall we continue with the ceremony? Fabian asked, his hand warm and steady on my back. I believe we have a marriage to formalize. I looked up at him, at this man who'd shown me what respect looked like, what partnership could be, and smiled. Yes, let's. The ceremony was beautiful. When Fabian slid the ring onto my finger, his hands were steady. When we exchanged vows, his voice was firm and sure. And when he kissed me, sealing our marriage, it felt like coming home. Behind us, I heard Louis's ragged breathing, heard Daniel trying to comfort him. But I didn't look back. I was done looking back. Fabian took me to a private island, the kind of place where the staff made themselves invisible and every moment could be savored without interruption. Our first night as husbands, we stood on the balcony of our villa, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and pink. No regrets. Fabian asked, his arms around me from behind. None. I leaned back against his chest. You? Only that I didn't meet you first. He pressed a kiss to my neck and I shivered. But we have now. That's what matters. We took our time that first night. Fabian was patient, thorough, making sure I knew exactly how much he wanted me. His hands learned every inch of my body, his mouth following the same path, until I was gasping his name and pulling him closer. Tell me what you want, he murmured against my skin. You, I breathed. All of you. Making love with Fabian was nothing like the fumbling, performative encounters I'd had with Louis. This was real, intense and intimate, tender and passionate. He watched my face as he moved inside me, adjusting his rhythm based on my reactions, making sure I felt everything. "God, Levi," he groaned, his control fraying. "You're perfect. So perfect." I wrapped my legs around him, pulling him deeper, losing myself in the sensation. When we finally fell over the edge together, it felt like something fundamental had shifted in the universe. We spent our honeymoon days exploring the island, swimming in hidden coves, talking for hours about everything and nothing. The nights were filled with passion, learning each other's bodies, discovering what made the other gasp and moan and beg for more. "I love you," Fabian told me one morning, the words soft against my sleep-mussed hair. "I know we started this as an arrangement, but I love you, Levi. Completely." "I love you too," I whispered back and meant it with every fiber of my being. We returned from our honeymoon to find that Louis and Daniel's relationship had imploded. Apparently, Fabian's assistant reported, trying to hide a smile, Mr. Edward accused Mr. Park of being complicit in the humiliation. Mr. Park countered that Mr. Edward's arrogance caused the entire situation. They've been seen arguing publicly on 3 separate occasions. "Tragic," I said dryly. "What about the design theft?" "The legal team is ready to proceed whenever you give the word." I looked at Fabian, who nodded. "Let's finish this." The lawsuit was devastating. We presented irrefutable evidence. Original files, design notes in my handwriting, emails discussing the projects. Daniel's career was destroyed before it could begin. He was fired from Louis's company in disgrace. But we didn't stop there. Mr. Edwards, disgusted by his grandson's behavior and incompetence, removed Louis from any significant role in the family business. Louis was forced to take a minor position with no real power, his dreams of controlling the Edwards empire shattered. "You've destroyed my life," Louis snarled when we encountered each other at a family function. "Everything I worked for." "You destroyed your own life," I corrected. "You had someone who loved you, who supported you, who would have given you everything. And you treated that like it was worthless. What happened is simply the consequence of your choices. You'll regret this," he hissed. Fabian stepped forward, his presence commanding. "Threaten my husband again, and I'll make sure you never work anywhere in this industry. Are we clear, nephew?" The word nephew, dripping with disdain, made Louis flinch. 6 months after our wedding, I stood in our home office, reviewing plans for my first independent architectural commission. A cultural center, my vision brought to life without compromise. "You're smiling," Fabian observed from the doorway. "I'm happy," I said simply. He crossed the room, pulling me into his arms. "Good. You deserve happiness. So do you." "I have it." He kissed me softly. "I have you. Everything else is just bonus." My previous life felt like a distant nightmare now. Yes, I'd lost years to Louis's manipulation and indifference. Yes, I'd suffered. But that suffering had led me here, to a man who treasured me, to a career I was passionate about, to a life built on mutual respect and genuine love. "I got the test results back," I told Fabian quietly. "The genetic condition." He tensed. "And? It's there. But the doctors caught it early. With treatment I'll be fine." It was never the death sentence Louis was waiting for. I pressed closer to him. "I'm going to be fine, Fabian. We're going to be fine." His arms tightened around me and I felt wetness on my neck, tears of relief. "Thank God," he whispered. "Thank God." We stood like that for a long time, holding each other, grateful for second chances and new beginnings. "Mr. Montgomery Edwards, the investors are here." I smiled at my assistant, gathering my presentation materials. My firm had grown beyond my wildest expectations. 3 major projects completed, 2 more in development, and a reputation for innovative design that was entirely my own. "Tell them I'll be right there." After the meeting, I headed home, not to the Montgomery estate where I'd grown up, but to the penthouse Fabian and I shared. Our home, filled with art we'd chosen together, books we'd debated over, comfortable furniture that invited conversation and intimacy. "How was your day?" Fabian asked when I arrived, pulling me into a kiss that still made my knees weak. "Excellent. The investors approved the museum project." I looped my arms around his neck. "How was yours?" "Better now that you're home." He nuzzled my neck. "I was thinking we could take a vacation next month. That island again, maybe?" "Perfect." We'd heard through family channels that Louis had moved abroad, trying to rebuild his reputation in a place where his failures weren't common knowledge. Daniel had apparently attempted to contact me several times, looking for forgiveness or perhaps a recommendation. He got neither. I didn't waste energy on bitterness. I'd learned that the best revenge wasn't destruction, it was building a life so good that the past couldn't touch it. I love you, I told Fabian, the words as easy and natural as breathing. I love you too. He smiled, that genuine smile that still made my heart skip. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for being worth choosing. We spent that evening like we spent most evenings, cooking dinner together, talking about our days, making love with the easy passion of two people who knew each other completely. Later, wrapped in each other's arms, I reflected on how differently my life had turned out this time. In my previous life, I died alone, betrayed, forgotten. In this life, I was loved, respected, and building something meaningful. The difference? I'd finally learned to choose myself, to demand the respect I deserved. And in doing so, I'd found something I hadn't even known I was looking for. A true partner, a real love, a future worth living. Louis Edward could keep his regrets and his ruined reputation. I had Fabian, I had my career, and I had a happiness that was completely, authentically mine. And that was the best revenge of all, living well, loving truly, and never looking back.